Welcome to the Flicks, Picks, and the Nitpicks. And I'm your humble host, S01EP03, man. Let's get it. Welcome to the new set. Looks a little bit better, not too far off from what we've had from before, but just some decent updates. I feel like it's a lot cleaner, a lot better when we go into season 2, which will be coming up shortly in the next couple of months. You'll see a new revamp, but it's good to be back to doing more shows. Long time running, but let's get back into it, man. We got a couple of topics that's on the right hand side, as you can see, and the first one that we're going to start discussing is going to be now the first headline we got coming up on the right hand sidebar is a faithful take on Dracula. Now, this story comes to you directly from Screen Rant on how the Dracula reboot will be more faithful to the original novel than other adaptations. Now, director Karen Kasama, I hope I said her name accurately, teases her new Dracula reboot will be more faithful to Bram Stoker's novel than other adaptations made in the past. Director Karen Kasama has teased the Dracula reboot will be different from other adaptations of the source material. Kasuma was announced as the director of the new adaptation back in March, following the box office success of Blumhouse's The Invisible Man. The BBC recently aired a brand new iteration of the character in the series Dracula, which also premiered on Netflix in January 2020. The series, which was met with mixed reviews, followed the vampire's origins in Eastern Europe and contained several differences from the novel. However, the show included facets of the original story that other adaptations had left out. Now, I'm not familiar with this new series that they said that they have. I'm not familiar with it at all, but let's just continue further in the article. And but I do want to say I haven't seen the new series. I haven't known anything about it. I just now recently, in researching this story, saw a couple of stills. It looks interesting, maybe something I may revisit down the line, but I'm not well aware of this at all. Now, to continue the article, the new Dracula reboot will be based on the beloved novel from Bram Stoker. The story follows Count Dracula, a vampire that relocates from Transylvania to England in order to find fresh blood and spread his deadly curse. As a result, a battle begins to brew between the vampire and a group of people led by a man, Abraham Van Helsing. There have been countless adaptations of Stoker's novel, including the 1958's Dracula starring Christopher Lee, 1992's Bram Stoker's Dracula starring Gary Oldman, which I loved, and more recently in 2014 Dracula Untold, which I haven't seen, starring Luke Evans. The latter created a new origin for the story for the iconic character, straying away from the story of Stoker's novel. Now, I'm not going to read the whole article, but they really go on to really delve into the idea of this one being more towards the book. Now, I haven't read the book myself. I've actually seen the Bram Stoker Dracula film from prior, and I loved it. So I can't really do a good and an honest compare and contrast when dealing with was it more faithful to the book than not. Now, I'm a firm believer in I like to see faithful adaptations from source material to screen as much as we can. It's called the adaptation for a reason, because if you do it verbatim by the book, it might not play out well in terms of space, in terms of pacing, but most importantly, time. A book that's written for maybe 400 to 500 pages might in excess be about a 4-hour film, maybe. I mean, you can't expect that to be the most appropriate business model, but I do feel like you could do faithful adaptations from a book on screen and omit things that you might not really need to be shared in the actual visual telling. That being said, the Dracula character in and of itself it far surpasses the book and its historical backdrop, to be quite honest. So you could kind of go anywhere with the idea of Dracula. Like I said, I haven't read the book. From what I've read in terms of like their personal take, it seems that they have a better take on the film in terms of like it was more romanticized in the film adaptation as opposed to how it was in the actual book. The book, from what I understood in reading another article from CBR, comic book movie news, where I actually first read the article before Screen Rat, they talked about how the book actually told the story of Dracula from several different points of view. He was more like, I don't know if a MacGuffin would be the perfect way to describe him, but he was basically, I guess the idea of him was kind of where Todd McFarlane wanted to do with his incarnation of a live action Spawn. Spawn was never going to be actually seen on screen per se. He was more of a mythical figure in the backdrop. You would hear him. Of course, it would be told untraditionally, akin to way a comic book film would be, and he wanted to bring more scare factor to it. From what I understand and reading another article from where the director was coming from, was that in the book it was different tellings. It wasn't as romanticized, and it was different depictions. So you seen Dracula through several different lenses. Would be a very interesting approach to do the film if you really would like to see that kind of depiction. It would make for a very artsy type of film, and it would take a real seasoned director or a director that's their shtick to tell a good tale like that could be still cohesive and entertaining at the same time, that will garner more rewatches, which that's a necessity of the industry, of the film industry. I hate to say it twice, but the film industry is basically, it's a business, and it runs as a business. Money has to come in, and if you can't get an entertaining film out there, no matter how passionate you are about it, and no matter how much the critics may like it and may revere it, if it's not enticing enough to make people want to go sit down and pay to watch, then you're just not going to go anywhere. And that's usually the balance beam that you try to have in being faithful to material, but also putting your artistic spin onto it, as well as giving something that the audience would like, more than just making something that's just so subjectively for you that only you could understand with the painting that you're actually painting. That being said, I would like to just drop down to one last part of this article where we can get a little bit more of a response from the actual director. She goes on to say, in an interview on the Kingcast via Bloody Disgusting, Kazuma teased that her Dracula reboot will be different from other adaptations of the Stoker's novel. When discussing her approach to the reboot, she states, "It's a fairly faithful adaptation of Bram Stoker's novel." She goes on to say, "I think something gets overlooked in the adaptations of Dracula in the past is the idea of multiple voices. In fact, the book is filled with different points of views, and the one point of view we don't get access to, and all most adaptations give access to, is Dracula himself. So I would just say, in some respect, this is going to be an adaptation called Dracula, but it's perhaps not the same kind of romantic hero that we've seen in past interpretations of Dracula." And that's what we just talked about, which is going to be an interesting approach. But the fact that they want to take the novel, which has been more romanticized, to give it a more horror aspect, though she didn't say in this quote, but from what I recall from reading elsewhere, that's the aim that she wants to go in, and I think that's a perfect aim to go. The romantic aspects of Dracula has been around all the time, even if you have a masked vampire in the film. Like, you can see that in not vamp, even not really vamp, even though they had there was sexual nature with the queen vampire in that. Fright Night. There's always a romantic seduction type of thing going into it that makes Dracula come off more erudite or more like sophisticated, a man of sophistication and of romance. And this is how he usually seduces his victims, which tend to be more often than not usually a female in terms of who he wants to be with him in turn, as opposed to just somebody for feeding. And with that being said, I'm interested. The question is, though, what do you guys think? Are you interested in a new adaptation of Bram Stoker's Dracula? Have you read the novel? Are there anything else you would like to educate me on that would make it a lot more fascinating? Not just for me, but for the audience? Leave it in the comments below. Next up, Wonder Woman 84 updates. Now, as we've gone through what we've gone through, we know about the pandemic. Everyone's well aware of. We're just coming out of quarantine, so you guys be safe out there as always. And Wonder Woman should have come out earlier this year. It was pushed back twice, and it was pushed back I think once or twice more before that, because it was supposed to come out last year. Now it's supposed to come out this year, and it's been moved maybe 2 or 3 times. Now its final location is going to be October as opposed to August, which makes sense because they're not trying to release it on digital platforms. You're trying to focus on giving it a theatrical release to make the most out of this than they can. And moving forward, it's going to be quite interesting about where the DC EU will be landing with respect to how that's going to affect when the Snyder Cut drops next year. Then we got more recent updates about the Flash is coming, and also I'm not sure if it's going to be Flash and Cyborg, but Cyborg will be part of his film. So with that being said, there's so much going on around it, but still not enough, which I have to give it respect. Now, there has been leaks of how Cheetah will look. Now, we've seen Cheetah in her, like when she's sexy and sassy. I guess she'll have her power, but she won't go through her transformation. Now, I'm hoping they give her a transformation, the likes of which that would make the people that did the special effects, the practical effects in American Werewolf in London. Now, if they could do a transformation sequence of that caliber, that would be beautiful. And I think we would have gotten something to that effect had the Snyderverse been still in play when that film was going from conception to shot. Because I think that Patty would have bounced more off of Zack Snyder. Or she might have felt like she would have had to, because he was kind of the Kevin Feige, the architect, if you will, of the whole cinematic universe in terms of aesthetic and where it came from and how he actually casted Diana Prince. He casted Gal Gadot when everyone else didn't believe in her. After he made his decision, as soon as she showed herself on screen, people felt like even if you hated BVS or not, one of the major saving graces was Wonder Woman, and she was well casted. That being said, we didn't get that much information. I mean, there were leaks. Yes, there were a whole lot of leaks. But one leak came out from a sticker pack was how Cheetah will be looking. And like I said, I would have preferred Cheetah to go into a transformation that would have been akin to American Werewolf in London. But I don't know if they'll go that way, because it feels like they're going for a lighter tone. Even though it seems like aesthetically it still could fit in the same universe. But it seems like Patty Jenkins wanted to divorce herself as much from anything that was with Snyder. And I don't know if she did it with malice or she did it more because, like, look, even though he put me on and gave me my first shot at the big leagues, since he was getting so much hate and everyone kept on hating at him in the building, those of which that had power are no longer in power, no longer even in the building. And if there is anyone left over from the old regime, it may be like one or two people, and their voices are not that strong in the building, at least as of now. That being said, we don't know where she wants this incarnation of Wonder Woman to go. We know she wants to go forward. We know that she wanted to be less muted colors and more vibrant. She wanted to basically, I don't know if she did for more artistic reason or she wanted to placate to the arguments of the anti-Snyder fan base, which I don't really want to get too saturated in this interview, but I think it's relevant enough to touch on, to try to posture where she might want to take Wonder Woman 84 now that this was really her baby. I think this was more her baby than the first one. The first one, she needed a lot more assistance because she never did a film like that before to that degree, and I think that was her first film since she did the film Monster that pretty much got Charlize Theron her Oscar. So I think it's going to be interesting, but the picture you see on screen right now is supposed to be Minerva when she becomes Cheetah. It's a distortion. It's not exactly what we're supposed to see, but I'm not sure if we're going to get a practical Cheetah just by looking at it, and it's heavily touched up. And I noticed that DC, some of their promo art, especially of Cyborg, a lot of it looked like it was amateurs. It didn't even look like it was something that you physically pulled and touched up. It looked over-touched. I want to feel like they're there. Even if you see the group picture of them all together, they never took that picture together. These were composite shots, and for me, it was offensively so obviously photoshopped. It felt like it was done by amateurs to a degree, like good amateurs, like good college try, but it felt like it was more of a composite rather than it was something that could have been naturally done where the people were there. And even some of the composite shots, it just look certain sections look a little bit more cartoony than they needed to. And I've noticed that with a lot of DC promos. I mean, it's not horrible all the time, but it was something that I've noticed because a lot of the pictures I used to see that everyone was using, I'm like, these are fan posters, right? Like, these aren't. It almost felt like when I started seeing DC people using it, it was like, yo, are you just showing love by using fan art, or this is something that came out of your building? I don't know. For me, maybe because I've done a lot of Photoshop work, it was a tad more jarring. I mean, I'm used to it now, but in the beginning, it was a lot more jarring. Not extremely, but enough to say it's kind of offensively jarring, and offensively in the manner of I would have expected so much more. And you could tell that someone did work on it, but that's the problem. It looked like someone heavily worked on it. So it just, like some of the other promo shots, like the Alex Ross, I love those promos. You could tell, now that felt cinematic. You know what I'm saying? But that being said, we're knowing that Wonder Woman is coming this October. They're aiming for the theatrical release so they can garner the best kind of business, and they want her to succeed. They don't want to put her in a bad situation, which is beautiful, because if she was to launch early in the movie season coming out of quarantine, I think it would have affected the box office in such a way that we'd always have to put an asterisk on it. DC doesn't need any more negative press. They are actually getting a lot more fan love by pivoting back to Snyder in a certain kind of way, which is interesting. But I think it's all about timing, because they pivoted towards the fans when the fans cried about Zack Snyder. The thing I think that WB needs to be is less reactionary, very receptive. So I'm glad that they're receptive and engaging with their fan base, but they need to be a little bit more steadfast, and some principles that you do put up, I think on some level you need to stand behind and see all the way through, because sometimes you guys have a lot more foresight than people give you credit for, because a lot of the ideas that you guys have, it's been said that Marvel mimicked a lot of the concepts that you were going for, in terms of, not saying ripping off the whole idea, but whole like script, but just the idea of good guys battling each other. Yeah, let's do that. Let's go into Civil War, because they're going to do BVS. Let's, you know what I mean? It's some of the stuff that even DC's done. You'd almost wonder, like, did Marvel kind of even go playing with with time? It just seemed like Marvel was always had an eyebrow up in the air, chin over DC's shoulder, trying to see what they were drawing, to see if they could actually draw upon that to kind of, since they already broken ground and done a lot of stuff, to mine for fresher ideas, but put a Marvel stamp onto it, which wouldn't be too far off from what they've been doing in the comics regardless, because you have people from both sides working back and forth, so eventually you was going to get a lot of layover anyway in ideas, thoughts, and concepts. So, but the question is what will Wonder Woman be moving forward? And the only newest updates we have is we got some pictures, we got some still shots, and we got a whole lot of leaks that the trailers are seemingly lending a lot of weight to. The question is now is how it's going to be depicted. And that's really all that matters, because sometimes you can read something off the page, it sounds ridiculous, but it's all about execution. And so far, so good. I love what we're seeing so far. Certain things, riding the lightning, a little weird, but we also know that in recent updates is that Patty Jenkins has a concept for a trilogy. Actually, a trilogy and an Amazon film, which I think will be quite interesting, because you could do a story of the Amazons that you don't even need Diana Prince to be a part of. Like they've been around for centuries. So it'd be a beautiful way to if you can even tell the origins of Themyscira, that would be amazing. And Patty Jenkins also talked about she didn't want to stay in the past. She wants to move forward. And I think she meant that both ways, in terms of living in the past of Snyderverse when she first said it, and moving forward. And I think she always I always felt like Patty Jenkins stood away, straight as far away as she could from the Snyderverse information, because I think she sided a little bit more with the fans than Zack Snyder, and I think it would have been hard for her to do that, because Zack Snyder stood behind Patty Jenkins, and I don't care what anyone says, I think he assisted her a lot more than she cares to credit, but no one's ever asked her, so I don't think she did it as a slight to him. You know, it just never came up. I just think it was just what directors do. Like, there's things I've heard that certain directors of note been on sets and actually grabbed the camera and shot certain scenes that you would not have known been in another director's movie, but the physical shot was done by a friend of theirs with a high name. I think I've heard Spielberg did something like that for someone and shot a literal scene. Grabbed the camera and did it for a friend. Don't hold me all the way to it, but if I'm not mistaken, he has. And with that being said, I just always felt like there was so much politics went through it. And if you ever could tell, Gal Gadot made sure that she didn't get into the gender stuff. And even Patty Jenkins, no, this is for everyone. Yeah, we're pushing the female empowerment, but we're not doing that basically as a slight to men. This is for everyone. And they're very self-aware of trying to walk that line of not getting caught up in anything that could be of the level of the anti Captain Marvel shit that was going on. You know what I'm saying? And which is smart, because you're not trying to get yourself engaged into that, into no dramas and nothing. You're just trying to focus on what you're trying to do and keep it pushing. And I think that's the best approach. But this new trilogy now is going to be quite fascinating, because the next one, she wants to set her into the present day. And the question is what kind of day will that be, and how interconnected will it be now that the Snyderverse will seem to live on streaming. And as of now, we have no definites that Henry Cavill will be in the part 2 of Man of Steel. We just know that he signed on to do certain stuff for HBO Max platform, and I believe he will be showing up in another DC. Well, that's the point, to do cameos. But you know what, I'm saying it wrong. The question is will Black Adam appear in Man of Steel 2? Because I think Black Adam is going to take place back in his time. Yeah, actually it will, because it'll be focusing on the Justice Society of America. But that said, man, Patty Jenkins, look forward to see what she got going on. I love the concept of going to the Amazons. She said that she's not beholden to direct that one, but she intends on directing Wonder Woman 3, and let's just see how 84 turns out. And I hope it turns out good. I have a feeling, and it's a fear, that it's might not be as good as the first, but I think it'll still be entertaining for me, and that's enough for me. I think it'll still be good. I don't think it'll be as grand, especially now with what's going on. I don't think the money will reciprocate its actual interest. That's the sad part. But we'll see. Leave it in the comments below what you think about the recent updates that's going on with Wonder Woman. Are you happy for another pushback, or you just kind of want to see it come out? Were you hoping that they just drop it already on streaming? Leave it in the comments below. And our next story is another edition from Screen Rant on the details of Godzilla versus Kong. And first off, I'm gonna let you guys know one thing. I watched the old Godzilla. I wasn't a big Godzilla head. I remember one time though, I was in high school. I was in my grandmother's house, and I remember they had like a marathon, and I was really watching it. I remember watching it. You know what I mean? That's why I remember when I know I watched it when I was younger. I was a little older when I watched it again at my grandmother's house, like when I watched that marathon. But it's no secret that if you ever grew up watching Power Rangers as a child, when the Green Ranger has his Dragon Zord come up out of the water, that's all a ripoff of Godzilla, if you didn't know. And I always knew that. That's from Godzilla. Even the Dragon Zord was a rip of Godzilla. The old intro about how he comes out of the water and all of that. So I'm very familiar with Godzilla. I'm not into the lore like that. I was never a big Godzilla head. I wasn't a big creatures and monster person per se. I just loved vampires and werewolves as a kid, and I liked a lot of horror movies. I would be lying if I said I was specifically into like monster movies. I just like horror films. It didn't matter who was in it or not. And if you could get monsters in there, I'm with it. That's just how I rolled. So seeing the first Godzilla, I really liked. That was a very real world approach from the ground up. I loved it. I love the idea that you kept fighting to get a good look at Godzilla. It just made every time that you did see Godzilla a moment. Now, yeah, you could argue like, dang, we didn't get enough Godzilla in it. But nah, like, that's how you kind of want to keep the creature. You want to keep it scary. Yeah, you don't just show nothing but a bunch of shots of Godzilla. I love that, like, you see them running from the ground. It look like a disaster movie, and then you get into a house to run away from all the shit falling, and just when you about to close the door, you see a backdrop of Godzilla finally getting into the screen, and you're like, yeah, and then close the door. I love that, because it makes you appreciate every time you get to see him, and it makes you anticipate, it makes you anxious. Now, if you don't get enough of it, it can make you rip the movie by the end of the film, but it will keep you engaged. And I like the first one. I didn't see the second one, but I did like the first one. That being said, I get that there's a lot of people that are in love with this whole entire lore of monsters and Godzillas and those type of films. And make no mistake, I can appreciate that. I just personally look forward to seeing a good film, a good depiction of it, something that can make this fight between them important. Now, I hope they don't do a cliche and give them a main villain to fight at the very end, because that's too obvious. If this whole thing is really going to be them fighting and end with them fighting, that would be the surprise. Now, if they end up getting together to fight an even bigger foe, then that would be kind of typical. I wouldn't get mad, because it's all about execution at the end of the day. We could love it, but then just be like, yo, that shit was so predictable, but I loved everything that I saw. Is what it is. But I just want to read this part off about its possible synopsis on Screen Rant that was posted on June 7th, 2020. A possible Godzilla vs. Kong synopsis has surfaced, teasing a battle deciding who takes the crown as king of the monsters. The upcoming MonsterVerse installment is one of the more highly anticipated films releasing this year. Surprisingly, little has been revealed so far. It hasn't been total silence. However, director Adam Wingard recently commented on the film's official rating, hyping plenty of monster destruction. There are many monsters in popular culture with king in the name. Red King, King Caesar, King Ghidorah, and more. Godzilla is uniquely the only character to be dubbed King of the Monsters. The title first introduced in 1956. When it comes to pop culture presence, Godzilla is hard to beat. There's only one other movie monster who can rival Godzilla for the title, King Kong. In the original King Kong vs. Godzilla, the beast battled it out in Japan. In the end, it was Kong who rose out of the water in triumph against the antagonistic Godzilla. Did he? Dang, I can't remember. I don't remember. I didn't remember who won. The circumstances will be far different when the two meet later this year. Godzilla and Kong are both protectors, thus there is no villain between the two. It's hard to say how it will go down, but if a new synopsis is to be believed, someone could be crowned king by the end. And that, in another article that I actually did read, and that was not the synopsis. In another article that I read, it stated that this may be a prelude to the next film at the end, which would be called King of the Monsters. And obviously that's supposed to be Godzilla. So the idea is that Godzilla will win in this one. And reading this, because Godzilla lost in the original one, which would kind of make sense. And it stated that in this article that the new Godzilla vs. Kong synopsis has been posted on IMDb via comic book. I guess that's comic book movie news. And I just want, if this is a synopsis, it seems more like a quote. And it says, as the gigantic Kong meets the unstoppable Godzilla, the world watches to see which one of them will become king of the monsters. And that's probably the actual synopsis. And if that's the synopsis, that's all you really need. If it's all focused about these monsters fighting together, it's going to be very simplistic, straight to the point. You don't really need a lot more to it unless you're going to break down like the threads or the characters that around it, like the human people and the lore. That's the only other thing I think that would be probably the intrigue and what's going to bring Kong to Godzilla and Godzilla to Kong. Because as it was read already, they're both protectors, so there's no real villain per se, so it's all about seeing who would win. And it says it in the title. The question I ask you guys, are you into Godzilla and the lore and the MonsterVerse lore? Let me know in the comments below. Tell me anything that I might need to look up that would make me want to have to go and run out and make sure that I go see it. I seen the first one of the reboots. I gotta see the second one. But I definitely will go check out this third installment after I see what I missed in the other one, because the other one actually looked well done. It looked real pretty on screen and everything. And from what I understand, everyone out of this MonsterVerse has new directors, so it's going to be a lot of different takes. In an article I read elsewhere, they even discussed could that work in an advantage, but it's been going this way so far, so we shall see. But let me know your thoughts on everything in the comments below. So with that being said, man, this wraps up episode 3. And yeah, man, had a good time. We're getting back into the regimen of things as we open up, so just look out for the channel. There's going to be a lot more activity on here. Reach out to me on all social media platforms, man, and I really do look forward to seeing you guys soon and getting more input to make this platform a lot bigger and better and very accommodating to the people. So again, with all that being said, man, you guys be safe out there. Protect yourselves. March safely. And as always, like, share, subscribe. See you next time. And as always, till I have a better outro, chill. Oh, and it's Juneteenth weekend, so happy Juneteenth. And what's a better outro than that?